Somewhere in London right now, there's a man who played bass on Another One Bites the Dust, Under Pressure, and I Want to Break Free, songs that have been heard by literally billions of people, and he has not performed in public since 1997. He doesn't give interviews. He doesn't show up to Hall of Fame ceremonies. He doesn't answer the calls. And when Brian May and Roger Taylor reformed Queen with a new lead singer and went on to play sold-out stadiums around the world, John Deacon wasn't there. Not even for the reunion. Not even for the money. The question isn't just why he walked away. The question is why someone who helped create one of the greatest catalogs in rock history decided that none of it was worth coming back for. To understand that, you have to go back to the beginning, because John Deacon was never the Queen you probably picture in your head. He was never the bombastic one, never the one throwing shapes under the spotlight. He was something rarer in that band, and honestly, rarer in rock music generally. He was a quiet architect. He was born on August 19th, 1951, in Oadby, Leicestershire, in the English Midlands. By the time he was a teenager, he was already building his own amplifiers from scratch, soldering components together in his bedroom, teaching himself electronics with a seriousness that most kids his age were putting into football or girls. He studied at Chelsea College in London, earning a first-class honors degree in electronics in 1971. The same year he joined Queen. He did both things simultaneously, finished an honors degree, and became the bassist of one of the most ambitious young bands in London. That tells you something about how John Deacon moved through the world. Methodical, private, never letting one thing fully consume the others. He joined Queen in February 1971 after they had already gone through two other bass players, and by his own admission, he barely said a word at the audition. Freddie Mercury, Brian May, and Roger Taylor took him on almost entirely on the strength of his playing. Roger Taylor later said in a 2014 interview with Rolling Stone that John walked in, played what needed to be played, and didn't try to sell himself. He let the music do it, Taylor said. That was the template for the next 20 years. What's sometimes forgotten, and this is the part your average casual Queen fan might not know, is that John Deacon wrote some of the band's biggest commercial hits, not contributed to them, wrote them. Another One Bites the Dust, the 1980 track from The Game, was entirely his. It went to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the United States, spent 3 weeks there, and crossed over into R&B charts in a way that no Queen song had before. Michael Jackson reportedly heard an early version of it and personally encouraged the band to release it as a single. John Deacon wrote it alone. He also wrote I Want to Break Free from 1984's The Works, another massive hit, particularly in the UK and across South America, where it became something approaching an anthem. He wrote You're My Best Friend from 1975's A Night at the Opera. The man who never spoke in interviews was quietly writing the songs that paid for the mansions. But here is where the story starts to turn, because none of that commercial success is really the story. The story is Freddie Mercury, and what losing him did to John Deacon specifically. Freddie had been diagnosed HIV positive by 1987, though the band kept that information private for years. John Deacon knew. They all knew. And for those last few years, from roughly 1989 through 1991, the band continued to record together. The Innuendo album, released in February 1991, was made while Freddie was already seriously ill. John played on those sessions. He watched his friend deteriorate in real time. He watched Freddie record vocals on days when he could barely stand, pushing through takes that would end up on that album, takes that you can still hear today. Freddie Mercury died on November 24th, 1991, at his home in Kensington, London. He was 45 years old. The official cause of death was bronchopneumonia brought on by AIDS. He had only confirmed his diagnosis publicly the day before. John Deacon gave almost no interviews in the months that followed. Brian May and Roger Taylor spoke publicly, appeared at tribute concerts, talked to the press. John did not. The one public statement he made around that time was brief and didn't come close to describing what those who knew him said he was going through privately. He had been close to Freddie in a way that was different from the others, quieter, less visible, but deep. Freddie understood John in a way that the other two perhaps didn't, or at least expressed it differently. In a 1976 interview with Capitol Radio, Mercury said of Deacon, "He's sorta quiet. Lots of people think that. Don't underestimate him. He's got a fiery streak underneath all that. I talk so much anyway, he likes to let me do all the talking. But once people crack that thin ice, then he's all right." Those who knew both men have described Freddie as a stabilizing force for John throughout the band's career. Someone who helped the introverted bassist navigate the pressure and strangeness of being in one of the biggest bands in the world. When that person was gone, there was no replacing what he had provided. According to a 1992 report in The Times, friends of Deacon described him as devastated in a way he wasn't showing the world. He did participate in the Freddie Mercury tribute concert at Wembley Stadium on April 20th, 1992, which drew around 72,000 people in person and was broadcast to an estimated 1 billion viewers worldwide across 76 countries. He played that night. He stood on that stage with Brian and Roger and a rotating cast of guest vocalists, George Michael, David Bowie, Annie Lennox, Elton John, and he played. But according to people close to the band, he found the whole experience extremely difficult. The spectacle of it, the size of it, the way the world was celebrating Freddie while Freddie was gone. He performed, and then he stepped back. In 1995, the three surviving members released Made in Heaven, a deeply unusual album built partly from vocal recordings Freddie had made in his final years, and partly from new instrumental work the band laid down around them. It was a genuine artistic statement and a commercial success, reaching #1 in the UK. John Deacon played on it, but in the immediate aftermath of Freddie's death, he had already made his position clear in the one public statement he issued at the time. He said, "As far as we are concerned, this is it. There is no point carrying on. It is impossible to replace Freddie." That wasn't grief talking in the moment. In the years that followed, nothing he did suggested he had changed his mind. After the final Queen concert he played, a charity performance in January 1997, John Deacon retired from music entirely. He was 45 years old, the same age Freddie had been when he died. He has not performed publicly since. What Brian May and Roger Taylor chose to do next is not a secret. They kept the Queen's name alive. They toured under the Queen banner with Paul Rodgers, the former lead singer of Bad Company and Free, from 2004 to 2009. They released an album together. Then, in 2011, they began performing occasionally with Adam Lambert, the runner-up from American Idol's 8th season in 2009, who had a genuinely extraordinary voice and a theatrical stage presence that, in purely visual terms, carried echoes of Freddie. Their first full concert tour launched in 2012. The Queen and Adam Lambert touring operation became one of the highest-grossing live acts in the world. The Rhapsody Tour, which launched in 2019 and ran through 2024, grossed over $180 million across 77 shows. Brian and Roger appeared on television, gave interviews, attended the Bohemian Rhapsody film premiere in 2018. A film that became the highest-grossing music biopic in history, earning over $900 million worldwide. John Deacon was not at the premiere. He was not in the promotional materials. He was reportedly consulted on the film and approved certain elements of it, but he did not show up. And here is where you might ask, was he bitter? Was there a falling out? Was there some money dispute or creative disagreement that turned ugly? The honest answer is that there is no evidence of anything like that. Brian May has spoken about John with warmth and something that sounds genuinely like grief in almost every interview where the subject comes up. In a 2023 interview with The Guardian, May described how, after the Paris Ballet performance, John looked at them and said, "I can't do this anymore." May added, "We knew that he at least needed a break, but as it turned out, he never came back." Roger Taylor has said similar things. "There is no war here. No tabloid story of betrayal, no lawsuit. Just a man who decided, at 45, that the thing he had given his life to no longer existed in a form he recognized, and that trying to rebuild it around someone else's voice was not something he was able to do. What John Deacon has been doing in the 30-odd years since he stepped off that stage is, by design, not very well documented. He lives in Putney in southwest London with his wife Veronica Tetzlaff, whom he married in 1975 and who has been with him ever since. They have 6 children together. By all accounts, he lives quietly, attends to his family, and has no professional musical activities of any kind. He has not released solo music, has not produced other artists, has not participated in any of the anniversary retrospectives, box set promotions, or Queen-related documentary projects that have emerged over the past 2 decades. When Queen was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame at the Waldorf Astoria in New York City on March 19, 2001, John Deacon was not there. He was inducted, the honor was his by right, but he didn't show up to receive it. Brian May and Roger Taylor were there. John was not. He was also inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2003, the first time an entire group had been inducted, with each member recognized individually. What he has done, quietly and consistently, is remain involved on the financial side. As May confirmed in a 2014 Rolling Stone interview, Deacon still approves major business decisions. The band undertakes nothing significant financially without consulting him first. He is, as May put it, still John Deacon in that respect. He just does it entirely from a distance, with no interviews, no appearances, and no explanations owed to anyone. The rare second-hand accounts of people who have run into him describe a man who seems entirely at peace with his decision. Not tortured, not hiding, just gone. There are fans and some commentators who have found his silence frustrating. The argument goes something like, "These are your songs, your legacy, your fans. Don't you owe them something?" That argument, with respect, misunderstands what John Deacon built his entire life around. He was never in Queen for the adulation. He was the one who stood at the back of the stage while Freddie owned the front of it. He was the one who went home to his wife and kids when the tours ended while his bandmates stayed up all night. He gave you "Another One Bites the Dust," and then he went to sleep. The idea that he owes anyone a continued public presence is, when you look at who he actually was, genuinely hard to defend. There is also this, which I think deserves to be said clearly. John Deacon watched his best friend die of AIDS at 45. He was there for it. And then he came out the other side of that grief and made a choice that Queen for him was something specific. It was Freddie Mercury, Brian May, Roger Taylor, and John Deacon. 4 people. And when one of those 4 people was gone, the thing he had signed up for no longer existed. That's not bitterness. That's a kind of loyalty that is actually quite rare in the music industry, where legacies get strip-mined and brands get extended long past the point where the original meaning survives. Brian May, to his credit, has never publicly pressured John to return. He has expressed sadness about it, has said he misses him, has said the door is always open. But he has also never pretended that what Queen does with Adam Lambert is the same as what Queen was in 1985. He's been honest that it's something different, something built on the legacy but not identical to it. That honesty, ironically, may be the clearest evidence that May understands exactly why John Deacon isn't there. The Bohemian Rhapsody film gave an entire new generation their introduction to Queen, and in that film, John Deacon is a character, played by Joseph Mazzello, who gradually fades toward the edges of the frame as the story reaches its climax. It's not unfair to the real man. It's actually quite true to him. He was always there, always essential, and always slightly outside the spotlight by his own choice. There is a version of this story where John Deacon is the tragedy, the man who walked away from a second act that made his bandmates wealthy and beloved all over again. But I'm not sure that version holds up. He already had the first act. He already had the Wembley shows, and the number ones, and the recording sessions with Freddie, and the 20 years of making music that will genuinely outlast all of them. What would the second act have given him that he didn't already have? More money he didn't need? More applause from people who were 8 years old when Freddie died? The chance to stand on stage next to someone else doing his best impression of a man John Deacon had actually known? He was 45 when he stopped. He is in his early 70s now, and somewhere in Putney or wherever he is living the life he chose, not the life the music industry expected of him, not the life the fans might have wanted, the one he picked quietly and completely, the same way he always did everything. There are musicians who burn out in public, who have their grief and their breakdowns documented in real time for the world to watch. And then there are musicians like John Deacon, who simply decide that the story is over, close the book, and walk back into the ordinary world. No farewell tour, no documentary, no podcast, just gone. The last time John Deacon played bass in public was on January 17th, 1997, at the Théâtre de Chaillot in Paris, at the premiere of the Béjart Ballet's Ballet for Life, a production set to Queen's music, created as a tribute to Freddie Mercury and choreographer Maurice Béjart's former principal dancer, Jorge Dawn, who had also died of AIDS. John stood on that stage with Brian, Roger, and Elton John, and they played The Show Must Go On. Brian May later recalled watching the footage back and seeing John look desperately uncomfortable, his whole body reacting against it. Afterwards, John told them, "I can never do this again. I can't do this." And he was right. That was the last time. So, if you grew up with Queen, if Bohemian Rhapsody was playing the night something important happened to you, if you heard Don't Stop Me Now or Somebody to Love at an age when music gets into you and never fully leaves, some of what you felt came from the man who chose this. The man who wrote those bass lines and then decided that loyalty to what the music actually was mattered more than the show going on. That's the real reason John Deacon never came back. Not bitterness, not money, not ego, just love for something that he knew, with complete clarity, could not be replaced. I genuinely love to know what you think about that. Do you respect the decision, or do you think he owes his fans something more? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every one of them, and if stories like this are the reason you come here, subscribing is the best way to make sure you don't miss the next one.